Good morning, good morning. Thanks for joining me for day 2 of the Heart Like David challenge. It's just a 5-day challenge. It's just some simple things here about the life of David. And I'm probably going to do this with a lot of characters in the Bible as we just move forward in time here. And so I thank you for joining me. And if you were on yesterday, I just want you to put a thumbs up in the chat, if you would. Put a thumbs up in there. And I want you to do something else. If you took yesterday's challenge seriously and you were actually trying to make sure that you took God with you all day long, okay? So if you were intentional about making sure that God was a part of everything that you were doing. Like I was saying yesterday, ask him, Lord, I have this meeting. Will you come to me with this meeting? Lord, I have this task to do. Will you help me with this task? Will you give me some direction here? Will you give me some advice here? Will you help me through this? If you did that kind of a thing yesterday, then I want you to do something else for me right now. I want you on a scale of 1 to 5. And this is just us being honest with each other, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, how well did you do? 5 being the best. And so the way I want you to signify that is with the fire emojis. Okay? So if you did super well, like you did that, you stuck with it all day long, I want you to put 5 fire emojis in the chat. If you did pretty good, like you did mostly good, this is probably where I would be, is the 4. 3.5 to 4, something like that. I don't know if you could do a half fire emoji, but I did really good throughout a good part of the day. And then as I got to evening, I kind of lost track of it. So I want you to put fire emojis in the chat as to how well you did. So 1 to 5, 1, I kind of stunk. 5, I did really awesome. And 2 to 4, somewhere in between. So that's for yesterday. So first thing we learned about David is that he was a shepherd out in the field alone all the time, but he truly wasn't alone. In fact, Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Now, that was not a psalm that was written by David, but it was one that was definitely exemplified by David. And so, Psalm 46:10, if you want to write that down, it's a great one. But today, we're going to talk about another quality of David that made his heart what it was. Okay? And this is that David valued his responsibilities even more than he valued his own life. Even more than he valued his own life. So let me read a little passage. And if you want to turn in your Bibles to this, it's 1 Samuel 17. This is where David and Goliath's story is. And I'm going to start with verse 34. But first, I'm wearing my Iron Man shirt. I don't know if you can see this, but this is was given to me by my daughter. I love you 3000, and it's amazing because he used to tell his daughter that he loved her tons, and she said, "I love you 3000." So it's kind of cool. But I've got my coffee in my Captain America mug this morning. I need to take a drink, and so hopefully you're chill today and joining me. We're just going to be a few more minutes on here, but let me take a drink and then we're going to read from 1 Samuel 17. Came back from Bolivia with a cold, and so I got to make sure I keep my throat good. So here we go. Starting with verse 34. Actually, I'm going to start with 32. Okay? David said to King Saul, he's like, "Don't worry about this Philistine, Goliath," because Goliath was taunting their army and they were afraid. And so David told Saul, "Don't worry about this Philistine. I'll go fight him." And Saul said, "Don't be ridiculous. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." Now, this next part is the story I want to focus on, where we talk about how David valued his responsibilities even above his own life. But David persisted. Verse 34, "I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. Are you kidding me? And he's serious, right? I have done this to both lions and bears, plural, okay? Both lions and bears. And I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. You see, David didn't just show up and fight Goliath. David had been fighting big battles all along the way. What does that mean? Well, he'd been fighting as if everything depended on his responsibility being done and being taken serious. He was fighting as if his life meant less than the job that God had given him. Wait a minute, the job God had given him? What did he say here? I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats. I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats. Well, his father gave him the responsibility. And one of the 10 commandments is honor your father and mother. And so he's honoring his father, and in so doing, he's honoring God. So if we want a heart like David, we need to learn to take the little responsibilities we've been given as if they're responsibilities directly from God. So I'm going to go to same verse that I went to yesterday, Colossians 3:23, and I want to bring this to life for you, okay? It says, work willingly at whatever you do as though you are working for the Lord rather than for people. But you have to understand the verse before this, because Paul's not just talking to anybody. He's talking to slaves. He's talking to slaves. Listen to this. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear for the Lord. Work willingly at whatever you do as though you are working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ. That's amazing, right? And this is exactly what David did. Yes, it was his father, but it could have been anybody that gave him that responsibility. How do we know that? Because just before Goliath, we see David in the palace playing the harp for Saul. And then later, we see that even though David had been anointed as the next king of Israel, Saul was still alive, and therefore he was still king. And 3 times David had a chance to take his life, but he didn't. Why? Because he was honoring the Lord. And the Lord put Saul in as king, and until the Lord changed that, Saul was king, not David. And so David took every responsibility very, very seriously. And I want you to grasp this verse with this. It's Luke 16, verse 10, and these are the words of Jesus. He says, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. If you are faithful with the sheep, I can trust you with the army. If you are faithful protecting those sheep, I can trust you as king to protect your people. That's what it's talking about here. If we relate this to David, that's what it's talking about. What about for you? If you're faithful with sweeping up the floor at work because the boss told you to, then he's going to know that he can trust you with bigger things. If you're faithful with taking care of the little bit of money that you have now, then God will know that he can trust you with more. Look at the rest of this. So 16:10, if you are faithful with little things, you will be faithful with large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are trustworthy about worldly wealth, if you are untrustworthy with worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? So listen, God wants to trust us. And he earns that trust, or should I say we earn his trust, by doing the little things as if they really do matter to him, because they do. Because they do. So when David was out there, he was honing his skills. When he's out there with the sheep, he was the shepherd of the sheep. God was the shepherd of him. And so he was honing his skills. What do I mean by that? Well, how did he get in the palace to play the harp for King Saul? Because he had honed his harp skills. He was out there worshiping the Lord with the harp, singing, writing songs. He was writing all the time. That's why we can turn to the Psalms and read so many of them. He was out there practicing the sling. That's how he knew. He's like, I can't wear this armor. I'm not used to it. And so he went and he grabbed 5 smooth stones and he ran to the battle. Why did he run to the battle? Because he was supremely confident in what he had done with the little things, with the little time that he had. He had extra time out there. He knew that he wasn't strong enough to take on a bear or a lion, but he knew that God had protected him, and he knew that God would do the same thing with the giant. So, I have a challenge for you today. The challenge today is to do your work as if God is watching, as if you're trying to make him proud of you today. So whatever that is. If you're a housewife, you're watching, you're a stay-at-home mom, and you're taking care of the kids, I want you to do it as if God was watching and they're his kids. Because truth is, he is watching and they are his kids, right? Or if you're doing the laundry, you're doing the dishes, you're making a meal, I want you to do it as if you're doing God's laundry, or you're making a meal for God. And you're so thrilled that he's joining you for dinner, because he is. If you're at work and the boss gives you some silly task or some ridiculous task or something that you feel, this was beneath me years ago, I want you to quit thinking like that. I want you to think, okay, if God is giving me this task, how can I do it to the best of my ability and even beyond? In fact, if I employ yesterday's challenge along with today's challenge, I'm going to say, okay, Lord, you want me to do this great. Help me to understand how. So whatever it is today that you have to do, if it's a workout, if it's something at work, if it's something, just a to-do list thing that you have to take care of, what if you did it today with joy, with peace, and with the best of your abilities? That's the challenge today. So if you're up for this challenge, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. And I want you to share this challenge with someone else, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 3. God bless you. Have an amazing day.